My name is Radu Tudorica. I'm a security researcher for Bitdefender Labs, and today I'll be presenting my research regarding ways to do lateral movement from a local compromise to a cloud compromise. And essentially what we'll be talking about today is a software called Google Credential Provider for Windows that from now on I'll be referring to as GCPW. And this software essentially allows these kinds of attacks, but we'll also talk about a method that only involves just Google Chrome. All right. So as a quick overview, what GCPW does is that it allows a company's employees to log in locally to their Windows machines using their Google Workspace accounts. And this essentially has some benefits. Mainly the fact that any security settings regarding Google Workspace authentication, such as password complexity or multi-factor authentication, can also be brought to Windows logon. Also, GCPW allows companies to deploy mobile device management policies on their employees' computers to edit different types of settings, install programs, etc. Okay, how users interact with it? Essentially, when a user opens up their laptop and tries to log in, they will see one of two screens. The first screen, let me check, this one, is a Windows login form that users need to fill out to log into their computers, and some other times it might be just a regular Windows login form. The difference between the two is that GCPW chooses the first one if it doesn't know of a currently active logon session with Google. Okay, what can admins do with it? Essentially, they can manage update settings, change permissions for users, set up BitLocker, and deploy many other MDM policies. Okay, before I start talking about methods of attacking GCPW, I'd like to share a few words about how we got to this research. And essentially, the team I'm part of was tasked with trying to find methods of attacking Google Workspace environments so that we can better protect our customers through our XDR product. And essentially, one of the methods we discovered was this. Also, the things that I'm going to talk about have been disclosed to Google, and everyone said, and they essentially said that they're not going to fix it because it was not a part of their threat modeling. Okay, so let's turn back to that Google login screen. When a user authenticates with that login screen, essentially three important things start happening. First off, a refresh token is generated for that user account. It's temporarily stored in the user registry hive. And then when the user next opens up Google Chrome, it's going to be stored there as well and deleted from the registry. Secondly, a token handle for the current authentication is generated so that GCPW knows whether the session is still active or not. And that token handle is stored in the local machine hive. Last but not least is that the user's password is encrypted using Google-provided encryption key and gets stored as a local security authority's secret. All right, so let's see how an attacker could take advantage of this kind of system. Firstly, an attacker would need to retrieve the refresh token for the current user. Then, using it, can generate access tokens for different Google services. And lastly, this specific kind of refresh token allows an attacker to retrieve the user's password and to retrieve the user's decryption key for their password. Okay, so let's start seeing the first point. Extracting the refresh authentication token can be done in two methods. The first method is to extract it from Chrome's profile. And essentially, when Chrome wants to store an important string that might be security sensitive, it encrypts it with a randomly generated key. But also that key is encrypted and stored in the local state file. And firstly, an attacker will need to retrieve that key, which is quite simple. They just need to read and parse a JSON file, and then decrypt it using crypt and protect data. And essentially, this step can be done without gaining any elevated privileges, just from the regular user context. Next up, with that decryption key in hand, an attacker just needs to read the web data database, go to the token service table, and there he will find all the refresh tokens that are stored for that Chrome profile. Essentially, this method is more reliable than the next method that I'm going to present, and also could be used on any Chrome browser. So essentially, if you are logged in with Chrome, with Google in Chrome, then this is the method an attacker could use to extract your refresh token. Next up, this second method is very specific to GCPW in the sense that for this method to work, we are going to take advantage of the fact that the refresh token is stored temporarily in the registry. So an attacker could take it from there and decrypt it using just crypt and protect data. Again, without needing any higher privileges. Okay, because the refresh token isn't stored permanently in the registry, methods to making this more reliable is to essentially trick GCPW into thinking that the user session has expired. To do this, an attacker could modify the token handle that we talked on previously, and by either changing its value or deleting it from the registry, GCPW would think that the next logon is from a session that has expired and will create a new refresh token. All right, so generating access tokens. This is pretty important because the refresh token can be used to generate access tokens to different GCPW services, or different Google services, without using any authentication material. So essentially, an attacker wouldn't need to know the password or anything regarding MFA to do this step. And it's pretty simple. An attacker would just need the refresh token, the email of the victim, and then the Chrome's auth 2 credentials that are stored in a Chrome binary, which are pretty easy to obtain by anyone. Also, not every scope can be derived from that refresh token, but the ones that can be extracted, that can be derived, are pretty devastating, to say the least. And here is the code for that. It's documented. It's pretty simple. These are also the credentials for Chrome. And yeah. Okay, so now what attack surface can be unlocked by an attacker that has just the refresh token? Firstly, they could use Google Drive. They could impersonate the user's account using Google Drive and extract all their files and all the files that they have access to. Secondly, there is a lesser known service called Google Vault that can be used by companies to conduct internal auditings. And if a user has access to that service, that Google Vault service, they could extract files, emails, and Google Hangouts chats for all the users in the company. Thirdly, if a user has access to the workspace administration page, an attacker could use that to create accounts that he controls on that company's infrastructure, and also could set higher permissions for that accounts. Next, all the files stored in GCP cloud storage that are available to the user are also available to the attacker. You could imagine how this could go very wrong if the attacker is a developer or has access to production data from clients. And lastly, and most probably interestingly, is the auth login scope that could be derived by this refresh token. Essentially, this is an undocumented scope that we uncovered during this research. We'll see a use for this next, but I could speculate and say that this privilege could also unlock some more attack surface, but there is no way for us to know for now. Okay, so let's see how an attacker could obtain the password. After dumping the local security authority secrets, an attacker would find a JSON that looks like this, which has a field called encrypted password and the resource ID. Okay, so if he generates an access token using that auth login privilege, he can then just do a GET request to this undocumented API and ask for the decryption key for that password. It's that easy. Essentially, the encryption is nothing too complicated. Here is the code. Essentially, the first few bytes are an AES key encrypted with RSA. The next few bytes are the actual value, and the last few bytes are message authentication code. All right, so now let's see how could an attacker exploit everything that we talked about. Meet the victim, Acme Software. They are a company that provides software for other clients. They are mainly using GCP. And because all of their users, all of their employees are remote, they decided to use GCPW to manage all their computers. Also, all the users are required to use multi-factor authentication, not to give the attacker too much of an easy time. Okay, let's meet the attacker. Jake, who specializes in very targeted attacks and has their sights set on Acme. So let's see how would an initial access work. Essentially, Jake could send a malicious email to Alice containing a downloader for his malware. Alice would open it, thinking it's a victim, thinking it's one of their clients, and her work computer would get infected. Next, Jake's malware exfiltrates the refresh token and the password of Alice. And because Alice doesn't have, or has enabled MFA and doesn't have that much privileges, Jake might need to start looking through her files on Google Drive. There, he would find a share with files that are accessed by IT admins, and he decides to poison one of those files. Next, when the IT admin opens that file, gets infected, Jake could now exfiltrate his password and refresh token, and then create a persistence account on that Google Workspace's environment, and also grant it super admin privileges. Okay, now that Jake can log in through the browser with his new account, he will add himself to the GCP organization admins group. Essentially, there is a way to configure GCP and Google Workspaces such that all the users that are part of some groups have privileges on all GCP projects. And essentially, the GCP organization admins grants all their users access, owner-level access to all GCP projects of the organization. Next, just to complete his attack, Jake is going to deploy a mobile device management policy of the type download and install so that he can install his malware on everyone's computers. All right, what can Jake do now? Well, he might take some APT-like actions, such as trying to steal company secrets, or trying to do some supply chain attacks, trying to infect Acme Software's users, or he could try to do a ransomware-like attack where he encrypts all the VMs in GCP, or just sell his access to the highest bidder. Okay, let's see what is there to be learned from all of this. Essentially, don't treat cloud services as being inherently secure. Think of it as an Active Directory that you don't need to patch, but you still need to find reasonable access permissions to everyone. Also, be very careful at the integrations that could make your life harder that can make your life easier and then make it harder if they are attacked. And thirdly, try to set up monitoring and alerts for absolutely everything, because if someone like Jake has set their sights on your company, then you would wish you had done that. All right, thank you very much for your attendance.
Thanks for the presentation. My question is, where would you say in this attack chain are the best opportunities to stop the attack, right? Because you presented on the attack chain how an attacker abused this with all the steps, right? Where would an organization have to focus its efforts? I guess everywhere, but where it's more successful to detect such an attack? And the other question is, you mentioned at some point when the attacker gains access to Alice's computer, they need to get system privileges. Is there like system level privileges, or can they extract it with just Alice's computer privileges, pretty much like her limited account privileges?
Okay, let's start with the first question. At least in my opinion, one of the more important steps that a company can do is firstly set up alerts for suspicious emails and suspiciously modified files, because in this way, Jack could have been stopped both from initial access and from his sort of lateral movement. But also, the company could have set up alerts for things like new users being created, higher privileges given to users. So that would have stopped Jake before it would have been too late. Can you repeat your second question?
Yeah, the second question was about on the initial steps of the attacks when he gains access to Alice's computer through the malicious email, right? I think the slide said he gains system privileges, and my question was, does he really need system privileges, or did you mean access to the local system with Alice's privileges? Because system privileges in the context of Windows means...
I know.
No.
Okay, so exactly for this attack, he wouldn't need system level privileges. He could have done it just with Alice's level of access, because he wouldn't need to use that password anywhere. So essentially extracting the password would be kind of pointless in this case.